guys, so before I start talking to you about today's topic of discussion, I am going to point out an idea I came up with because I want to ask you guys if you like it or not. So, normally you would be hearing the sound of my computer in the background. And to cover this up, I'm playing the sound of rain. I found a website called mynoise.net, which is a frequency-shaped noise generator. And so what you can do is you can sort of pick the noise that you want to hear, sort of background noise. They have white noise, they have natural noises, they have like in utero noises to help babies sleep. A lot of them are very meditative or very ASMR inducing. So I wanted to try this out. This is the rain noise generator, and they have all sorts of different knobs that you can increase or decrease. So you can sort of customize the sound that you want to play. And I will link to this in the description, to this specific noise playing in the background if I can. But I want to try and start doing this rather than just having the computer humming in the background. Let me know if this helps, like hearing this along with the whispering, because otherwise it seems very strange and quiet for me to look back on my videos and it's just me whispering and the computer noise. So hopefully this can sufficiently cover it up, or maybe even complement it in some cases. Anyway, so today I'm going to talk to you about something called synesthesia, which is actually not something that I have, but something that I've been interested in and looked into researching since about high school. When I was in high school, for one of my math classes, the final was to write a paper on something that was somehow related to math. And I was not interested in math when I was in high school. I thought it was incredibly boring, and though I'm still not very good at it, I can at least appreciate it now. But at the time, I did not want to write about a mathematician or anything. So I decided to write my paper on synesthesia. And in a moment when I explain it to you, you can sort of tell how it can be argued that it's related to math. I think my teacher knew that I wasn't very good at math, and so as long as I was willing to write about something that was interesting to me and somewhat related, then she was okay with it. But, so I wrote this paper on it because I had heard a little bit about it, and I wanted to learn more. And then I just found myself completely entranced by this idea. So that's why I wanted to do a video about it for you guys. So synesthesia is a neurological condition. It's been compared to things like color blindness in that it's not really a disease, it's not really a disorder, but basically a person, there's one sensory input that gets associated with another sensory input that isn't actually there. And see, this makes it sound like some sort of schizophrenia, you know, because a lot of the times this leads to seeing things that don't really exist. But it's sort of different in a sense. It's not like they're seeing, like these people are seeing like bunny rabbits where there isn't a bunny rabbit. Because it's just a very vague sensory input, like a color or a shape. And there are a lot of types of synesthesia. So I'm thinking probably when I describe the different types, it'll be a little bit clearer to those of you who might not fully understand it. But one of the biggest examples is called graphene color synesthesia. So when a person sees a certain letter or number, it will be associated with a certain color, and it will always be associated with that color. So the number 1 will always be yellow, the letter A will always be red. And the reason why this isn't really considered a disorder is because it doesn't really help or hurt the person. It can help them in many ways. So people with graphene color synesthesia who associate certain numbers with colors tend to be better at math, for example. And people with who associate letters with colors may be better at spelling, for example, or maybe even reading. So it helps them a little bit in these ways, but otherwise, like, it doesn't really do anything against them, and in fact, most people with synesthesia don't even know that it's a thing that not everyone has. They live their lives as if this is completely normal, as if everyone else has the same associations that they do, until they either find out about synesthesia or until they vocalize this. I had a friend who had synesthesia who once told me that she didn't know until one day she was explaining a math problem to someone, and it was something along the lines of, oh, you know it's 2 because it's blue. And she couldn't understand why the person didn't understand that association. Or there were many famous people who have had synesthesia, particularly creative people. And for example, I believe it was Franz Liszt, a well-known composer, who had synesthesia, who had a sort of music color synesthesia, where music was associated with color. And when he was conducting, he would tell the orchestra to, oh, play a little bluer, if you please. And they would have no idea what's going on. You know, what does he mean, play bluer? But, it's really fascinating to me, because like I said, it's not exactly a disorder. Because of that, I'm very curious as to the many different types, as to how it helps people, how it hurts people, and even how it affects people over time. Like I said, someone who has a number color synesthesia might be very good at math. Maybe there are some really well-known mathematicians who have this type of synesthesia. I've mentioned, I think, in my Lolita video that Vladimir Nabokov had synesthesia, and you could tell from the way that he wrote, because he, for example, described Lolita as brown-scented. You know, other writers out there who have had synesthesia who let this affect their writing, or composers or musicians who have some sort of music color synesthesia. Anyway, I'm going to go down this list and talk a little bit about other sort of forms of synesthesia. So I've mentioned graphene color synesthesia, and that can also have many other different elements. So not only can graphenes, which is the sort of word which means both numbers and letters, so not only can these graphenes have colors, but sometimes they have like personalities to them, you know. And a lot of people, when they've done studies on people with synesthesia, there are certain tendencies. So the color A tends to be red, for example, which is really interesting. There's a quote here that I really like. That was a child talking to her father about her synesthesia and said, I realized that to make an R, all I had to do was first write a P and draw a line down from its loop. And I was so surprised that I could turn a yellow letter into an orange letter just by adding a line. Which I think says a lot as to how people with synesthesia just view the world completely differently. And it's very interesting to read quotes like this from people who have synesthesia. So here's another one. It's called chromesthesia, which is a word for a sort of sound color synesthesia, which can be, again, even within this, there's a huge variety. It can be just sounds, like the sound of a cat purring will have a certain color to it, or music, like I said with the example of list, or voices can have colors. And it's described as to be something like seeing fireworks. So if you have this type of synesthesia, if you had this type of synesthesia, you might hear, or you might see one color of fireworks going off when you hear my voice, and then you could go on to the next ASMR video, and then there would be a different kind of fireworks for that person's voice. And let's see. Okay, yeah, so people with any sort of color synesthesia, people tend to disagree. So here it mentions that composers Liszt and Rimsky-Korsakov both had synesthesia, and famously they would always disagree on what color the music was, which I find really funny, the idea of two composers arguing about how, no, this piece is extremely blue, oh no, I think it's, you know, a dull orange, whereas I think it's an electric blue or something like that. Which is very funny to think about. And I imagine it would be the same for other types of synesthesia too, where people would perceive, you know, someone might think the letter A is red, but someone else might think it's yellow. And if two people with this type of synesthesia happen to meet, they would disagree. Another thing I've read is that if someone has some sort of synesthesia and they are presented with information that disagrees with their synesthesia, for example, again, if someone perceives A to be red, and they have like maybe one of those the letter magnets, and on the magnet that A is green, then it will sort of bug them a little bit. And I don't know to what extent, but it's basically said that if something disagrees with their synesthesia, then it will bother the person and they will try to fix it if they can. Let's see, another one is number form synesthesia. So most people perceive a number line to be straight left to right. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and then on the other side of 0, then -1, -2. But some people have a specific type of synesthesia where the number line sort of moves. And for some people, it can be based on certain patterns, like it might go in a circle, and like it's from 0 to 10, and then from 10 to 20, and then sort of be like little loops, or it could sort of bend and twist all over the place. And a lot of the times, people with this type of synesthesia will, again, be better with numbers and be better at associating numbers, because sometimes having this sort of synesthesia, the number line will bend and twist in a way that makes sense to the person in some sort of way, like maybe prime numbers tend to be physically higher up than numbers that aren't prime, so then that person might be really good at remembering prime numbers, or they might be really good at memorizing the digits of pi, because of something related to the number line. I really don't know as much about this form of synesthesia as I do about the other two, which are far more common. But that is another one that's mentioned. I've heard about voice gustatory synesthesia, which is when a person's voice has a flavor to it. And there's also auditory tactile synesthesia. So you can feel things based on sound. And I don't know too much about this. I haven't been able to find too much into it because the chromesthesia, the music and color, and the graphene color are the two most well-known kinds of synesthesia. But, and I'm not really sure, like, would you feel it, like, on your fingertips, or all over your body, or I guess maybe even your ears, because that's how you're hearing? I don't really know. I wish I could give you more information about this, but unfortunately, synesthesia is not a very deeply researched phenomenon. There have been a lot of tests into, different effects of synesthesia. For example, the fact that a lot of people with synesthesia will have multiple types of synesthesia. So they may have the number form, the number line synesthesia, as well as the music and color synesthesia. Or they may have, voice gustatory type of synesthesia along with the graphene color synesthesia. And this means that people with synesthesia can be prone to a sort of sensory overload when there's too much happening at once. Because imagine if you had, say, a sound color synesthesia and you're in the middle of a city where there are cars honking, there are people talking, there are animals making noise, there's planes overhead, and you're just seeing fireworks all over the place of all these different colors. And I cannot imagine what that would be like, getting a sensory overload like that. I am also curious, just sort of my own curiosity, as to whether people with synesthesia can have things like ASMR. Because synesthesia is very reliant on the senses, and ASMR is as well. So I wonder, is a person with synesthesia less likely to have ASMR just because synesthesia would sort of overpower it? Or are they more likely to experience it because they have more sensory input going on? I don't really know. Again, both ASMR and synesthesia are severely under-researched. So, yeah. I have looked into a little bit of the causes of synesthesia, but I'm not going to go too deeply into that, I think, because this video is already very long, and also because it goes into neuroscience quite a bit, and I don't want to have to spend the next 20 minutes explaining neuroscience so I can explain this phenomenon. But basically, the cause is very obviously due to some sort of balance of chemicals in the brain, and the prevailing theory used to be that that it was due to a cross-wiring. Like, for example, the graphene color, the part of the brain that that recognizes these graphenes is very close to the part of the brain that recognizes color. So if there was a lot of cross-wiring between, neurons shooting back and forth, then it would make sense. However, that doesn't quite make sense for other forms of synesthesia. For example, something like voice gustatory synesthesia. The areas are not really that close to each other. Or like music and color synesthesia. The parts of the brain associated with music and color are not particularly close. One's up here at the front and one's way in the back. So so that doesn't quite make sense. That could be a reason as to why voice gustatory, as to why certain types of synesthesia are more popular than others. So why graphene color synesthesia is the most common. But that doesn't explain all synesthesia. And my personal theory is that it's related to the dopamine in the brain, so the specific neurotransmitter that does go through all of these areas, and just more activity going around in certain parts of the brain. But I'm not really going to go too deeply into that. Again, I would have to explain a lot of neuroscience, which I may do in a later video. Just talk a little bit about neuroscience in the brain. But I think I will stop with that for today. I hope this wasn't too difficult to follow. I realize I was sort of all over the place with talking about synesthesia, but it's sort of difficult to know where to start and what exactly to cover. And I was trying to make it accessible to people who might not know that much about psychology or neuroscience or something like that. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me questions in the comments, because this is something that I have researched a lot. So that is it. Let me know, again, if you have any questions about synesthesia or anything like that. Or if you have any, comments regarding the sound playing in the background, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, or what sort of sound you want me to try and get for next time. And I think I'll leave it at that. See you guys next time.